Hi, okay, so this is my Hugh Hefner series. It's the first series that I ever posted on TikTok, so kind of a special place in my heart because of that. But I know that I said that I was going to put content on here that was specifically for YouTube, and I still am working on that. I am currently working on 2 series that are specifically for YouTube, and that I know that y'all want to see. Y'all have requested a bunch on my TikTok, but until then, it's taking me a little bit longer just because I do a TikTok series every single week. That's a lot of researching already, but I am going to start uploading my TikTok series on here just so that if y'all want to see it in a non-scrolling format, you can. And I can also just grow this channel. We're working on it. It's a process, but I promise I am still working on the YouTube content. And in the meantime, I really hope that y'all enjoy this series. And if you have any other ideas for things that I should do on this YouTube channel in the meantime, while I'm working on the series, if you want shorter videos, I can definitely manage shorter videos in the meantime while I'm researching. So just let me know, and I really hope that y'all enjoy this video.
Okay, hi. So I've been watching Girls Next Door a lot, and I have a lot of Playboy knowledge, arguably too much. So I'm going to do a series on Playboy because I love these series on TikTok. So we're starting out with just the beginnings of Hugh Hefner. He was born in 1926. He's an Aries moon, he's an Aries sun, a Pisces moon, and a Virgo rising. Think about that. He is also the descendant of some hotshot Puritans like John Winthrop, so they're probably rolling around in their grave about that because he's Hugh Hefner. And he was actually really shy in school until he reinvented himself as Hef. He was also in World War II, and he drew cartoons for the army. And then we'll get into like his first wife in a second. He waited until marriage. Yes, and all of the Playboy drama, the beginnings of Playboy, all the relationships, and it's going to be super long and super awesome, so stick around. Now that we've got the background on our short king over here, 5'9" by the way, we'll start with his first wife. Her name was Millie, and they met while she was at Northwestern and he was at the University of Illinois, and they actually waited till marriage, and she waited for him while he was in the army, but they actually didn't really wait till marriage. But they didn't actually wait until marriage. They actually ended up having sex right before they got married. And that's when Millie chose to reveal that she had actually had an affair while he was in the army, which he has described as the most devastating moment of his life. He still married her though. They stayed together. They had 2 kids. He started Playboy while he was with her, but ultimately the marriage did not work out. She said she felt really, really guilty, and she let him have affairs with other women while they were married, which, I mean, fair enough, I suppose. It really does sound like a villain origin story for Mr. Hugh, though. That is horrifying to, maybe he shouldn't have taken his virginity and then revealed that you had an affair. But it is what it is, and he became Hugh Hefner. So I'll talk about the inception of Playboy in the next part. But it really does sound like a villain origin story, doesn't it? Yep. And we're talking about the inception of Playboy, and here's Mr. Hugh in his prime, I would say. And he started Playboy on an $8,000 investment, and $1,000 of that came from his own mommy, which is kind of gross. And the first cover girl was Marilyn Monroe, who he was super obsessed with. And here's Miss Marilyn on the cover. And it featured a full nude photo of her. And how did he get those nude photos? Well, they were 4 years old, from before Marilyn had even become famous. And apparently she took them because she needed to pay a car payment. And the photographer promised that she would be unrecognizable. And she even changed her name because she was very ashamed of them. However, then she became Marilyn Monroe, and Hugh Hefner bought the photo rights for a whopping $500, and it was just okay to just put her pictures in there without any consent. Nice. And Marilyn actually said that she actually ended up buying the magazine herself so that she could see herself in it, but she said she never got any money for it, never got paid, and never even got a thank you note, even though he was super obsessed with her to the point that he bought a burial plot next to her so that he could be laid to rest beside her, which he was planning on doing up until like right before his death. But she was the first sweetheart of the month, as they were called at the time, soon to become Playmates. And Playboy, when thinking about like why it became successful, I think it's for a couple reasons. First of all, it was the first to have fully nude photos in them, and they were challenged a lot on that. You weren't even supposed to be selling that across state lines at the time, but Hugh Hefner challenged a lot of rules on sexuality. And it was also what he said it was post-Korean War. Men wanted to be sophisticated gentlemen, and it was kind of like a guidebook for them on that. And then in 1960, the Playboy clubs started opening up, and I will do my next part on the Playboy clubs because, man, there is a lot to tell on that tale, and the puns are already beginning. And we're talking about the Playboy Bunny Clubs that opened in 1960 in Chicago. There they are. They look super cute. And lots of what we know is actually from Gloria Steinem going undercover for a month there. And there's actually a movie about it. It's called A Bunny's Tale. I highly recommend watching it. It's really good. But all bunnies were supposed to be between 21 and 24. They had a lot of entry stuff. They had tests, like trial runs and stuff like that, as well as a medical exam, including an internal exam, which I think we all know what I'm saying by that. And they also got tested for STDs regularly. They also had really strict appearance standards. They had daily weigh-ins. They were supposed to wear wigs, bright lipstick, have their nails manicured, minimum 3-inch heels, no chewing gum. They had to smoke cigarettes specifically in a certain way. They had a bunny stance, which was like with one hip jutted out, and also a way that they had to serve drinks. It's called the bunny dip. And their uniforms came in 2 sizes only, 34D and 36D. So there was a lot of stuffing going on. And they had bunny mothers who were kind of like advisors to protect them through the experience, which is good. But they also had very strict rules. They could not date any members except the key holder members, who were very fancy gentlemen. And they even had undercover detectives come in to try and offer the girls money to go home with them and stuff, to make sure that they weren't doing that. But other ways for them to make money, because they did have to split tips with the club and didn't make nearly as much as it was originally advertised for them to make, but they would sell Polaroids and cigarettes for a nickel, and they would heckle them to give them more money, the men, if they weren't giving enough, which I think is smart and very good of them. And they look super cute. And a lot of accounts differ on like how girls found this experience to be. Some girls felt like they were very protected, nobody would lay a hand on you, everyone was very respectful, but it is not presented like that by Gloria Steinem, I'll say. So take it as you will. I mean, it's kind of a Hooters girl position in my opinion. I would say that's kind of the today's equivalent, but if you're a Hooters girl, you can let me know. But I know they have really strict appearance standards, so it's similar. And here's Hef with all of the bunnies at the Chicago club. And in the next part, I'm going to talk more about Hugh, but I just want to make the distinction real quick. These are not playmates, they're bunnies. Bunnies work events, playmates are in the magazine. You can be both, but right now I'm just specifically talking about the Playboy clubs. All right, so what you're looking at here is Jane Mansfield on the cover of Playboy, and this is the cover that got Hugh Hefner arrested for obscenity. So this was actually Jane's cover shoot for publicity for her newest movie. She was a movie star at the time, and actually later on, when she was in a custody battle for her son, her ex-husband used this as proof of her being an unfit mother, which I find to be fucking ridiculous. Anyways, and he was arrested on obscenity charges for this because they felt that the captions deemed it not artistic because they were too graphic. So not even actually the photos. And let me pull up his mugshot because it's good. All right, here he is. Here's his mugshot here. And they were worried that he was trying to transport porn across state lines. And so he got interviewed by the FBI and surveilled by the FBI for a while. But they also interviewed people around him, and they said he was far too clever to violate any laws. And at his trial, Hef said that it was up to the person and the individual to decide what was too suggestive or sexual for them. And they ended up getting the charges dropped, so that was good. And that is when he started the Hugh Hefner Foundation. So the Hugh Hefner Foundation is all about civil rights, First Amendment rights, and then sex and drug policies. Hef was a big advocate on loosening drug laws as well. And in the next part, I'm going to talk about his relationship with Barbie Benton, which is one of his first really serious relationships that there's a lot known about. There's not too much on him and Millie, but there's a lot on Barbie. Okay, so 1969, this is where things really get juicy. What? The streets again? Sorry, anyways. So he met Barbie Benton, aka Barbara Lynn Klein, on the set of Playboy After Dark in 1969. That was a TV show they had going on. And she was on the TV show. She was 18 and he was 42. And at the time, she was a student at UCLA, and he actually first approached her while she was studying on a break on set. And he really liked that she was a student, apparently, and there's also actually another quote from him. I think this is from later in his life, where he said that one of the things he loves about dating young women is the teacher-student dynamic. So creepy. Anyways, he approached her on set, and initially he asked if he could hold her hand, which is kind of a weird move, but then he asked her on a date. And she said, I don't know, I haven't been out with anyone older than 24 before. And he said, me neither. So cute. So cute. And she said she was not initially interested in him, which I think is the natural response of 18-year-olds to most 42-year-olds. And look how beautiful she is. But they did go on a first date, a group date, to a disco called the Candy Store in LA. And one of the main reasons that she decided to go was because Shel Silverstein would be in attendance. Y'all remember Shel Silverstein? A Light in the Attic? Hold on. Does this jog your memory? This guy right here? Yeah, Shel Silverstein, famous poet, and she really liked him, as does everyone. So she went. Don't blame her. And actually, at the time, Miss Barbie had multiple suitors, courters, whatever. Anyways, she had multiple dudes. She had her college boyfriend back at UCLA, but she also had Jimmy Can courting her. And if you don't know Jimmy Can, he was in The Godfather. Wait, hold on, I'll find a picture. Okay, here he is. He was in The Godfather, he was Sonny. He was also, more notably, in Elf. He was the dad in Elf. He was probably like 30 at the time, if I'm calculating right. And so she had some older men going on, but she chose Hef. He won the race. So she started dating Hef regularly, and she said that he was super romantic, super affectionate. They look very loved up here. But he was also very affectionate with other women, liked to kiss other girls. But she said that that did not bother her because she was very confident and secure in the relationship, which personally, if my boyfriend was kissing other girls, I wouldn't feel very confident and secure. However, if he was 42 and loaded, I might feel a little bit better. And also, real quick before this ends, she was only 2 years older than his kids. I mean, think of the girlfriends to come, but they're actually still really good friends now, her and his daughter, Christy. So Barbie had a rule while they were dating that she would never go over to his house. And so then if he wanted to see her, he had to ask her out on a date. And I actually think that that's a pretty good rule of thumb. So if anyone wants any dating advice that you didn't ask for, maybe that's something to go with. They did end up moving in together, though, because she found the Playboy mansion for him. She found the mansion and convinced him to go see it in person and to buy it. And she said, hey, if you buy this, we're moving in together. And they did. And she said that their relationship, once they moved into the mansion, was like filled with celebrities. There were always celebrities who were regulars at the mansion, others filtering in and out because Hef loved movies. But she actually didn't know like half of the celebrities who came, maybe because she was 18. She also obviously was on the cover of Playboy 4 different times. She's so cute. And she started to really make it with modeling, music, acting. She was on a bunch of different TV shows, including the Hee Haw Show and Sugar Time. I'll bring up some pictures of those. Here she is on Hee Haw. And actually, part of that was changing her name. Hef actually insisted that she change her name to Barbie Benton from Barbara Lynn Klein so that she could make it in Hollywood. So she did that, and she was becoming very successful. She also released 2 country music albums that did really well, but relationship hit the rocks at that point. So as she put it, she became a successful singer and was on the road, and he just couldn't be expected to remain loyal. And she doesn't seem to blame him at all for that. And so she caught him cheating multiple times. And each time that she caught him cheating on her, he would ask her to marry him. She would move out and then he would propose. That happened 3 times. And apparently on the 3rd time, it was really over. She really wanted a commitment and she wanted a family, and she just didn't ever see him being happy that way. But I think it also probably got to her, all the desperation proposals, kind of weird. They did, however, remain friends, and he actually also proposed to her one more time, for a 4th time, some point down the line. And obviously she said no, but he has said that it was his biggest regret that he broke up with her, or that they ended in general. And I can see why. She aged extremely well. And in this next part, I need to discuss what was happening while they were together at the end, which was a drug investigation. Okay, so this next part is going to be a little bit difficult because TikTok doesn't let you say certain things, and this is about an investigation surrounding substances. So I'm just going to be referring to it as candy, okay? So the investigation was for candy activities at the Chicago Playboy Club, as well as throughout the network of the Playboy resorts and at the Playboy Mansion. And it was kind of just known that there was candy at the Playboy Mansion and at the resorts, at the clubs, but it was just recreational. But they started to think people might be selling it. And it actually started with the death of a Playboy bunny. So this is Adrienne Pollack, and she was only 23 when she died in 1973 of having too much candy. And she was a Playboy Club bunny at the Chicago location. But things really got serious when Bobby Arnstein, who was Hef's secretary, got arrested outside of the Playboy Mansion for possession of candy and distributing of candy. And the reason they thought this was because she was in a relationship with a known seller of candy, and they had bugged his phone and heard her asking for candy for a mansion party. And they also had someone wired who bought candy from him. So that was a little bit confirming. They thought that there might be a network going on through the Playboy resorts. And she was actually convicted of the crime, and she had a 15-year sentence, but she was free pending an appeal. And that's when she actually intentionally took too much candy. So she wouldn't be around anymore, if you get my drift. But in her note, her leaving note, she said to her lawyer that she was innocent of the charges and that she only indulged in occasional candy usage personally. And she also defended Hef and said he was fantastic. And Hef, in a press conference, described it as her being hounded by federal investigators into unaliving herself, and also said that she was troubled and she'd already attempted that twice. And he said that part of that hounding was that she had been pressured to produce evidence against him, and that she didn't have any evidence against him, that he didn't use any hard candies. And as for the rumors that there was candy at the Playboy Mansion, at Playboy parties, at Playboy clubs, he said there would be no way for him to know if there was any of that at the Playboy Mansion because they don't search their guests. But he's not using it, is what he claims. And he also accused a federal investigator of being out for him because of Playboy's free speech movement and the Hugh Hefner Foundation. And that federal investigator said that he denied that. And he said that he had actually met with Bobby Arnstein a few times to let her know that there was a contract out on her life. So Bobby left the world in December of 1975, and actually very shortly after that they released a statement saying that they were discontinuing the investigation and that there wasn't enough evidence. And personally, I just find it hard to think that we lost somebody over an investigation where there ended up not being enough evidence. And I wonder for how long they knew that there wasn't enough evidence, or if her leaving the world had something to do with it. And anyways, it's 1982. Shannon Tweed meets Hugh Hefner. He's
fresh, semi-fresh out of his relationship with Barbie Benton. I think he had been just like seeing girls randomly, but this is his next serious relationship. And he met Shannon at a mansion party. She had been invited to that mansion party because she was noticed by Playboy photographers. And then she moved into the mansion. And of course, during that year that she was in the mansion, she was also a playmate. There she is with her check. And you would do it too for a check, wouldn't you? She was 24, he was 56. But you would do it too for a check, okay? It's no judgment. And she did say that she had a big effect on him, and that was getting him out of the house. If you've seen Girls Next Door, you would know that he does not like leaving the mansion. That's like his favorite place in the world. He never wants to leave. But she said she got him out more than any other girlfriend did. And she also bought him a lot of real clothing besides the silk pajamas and the robe. So anything that he's wearing that's real clothing, she says, I probably bought that. Which, that was a great move on her part. Thank you. Some other intel that we got from her was on some food preferences of his, specifically that his steak had to be cut up in little pieces and melon had to be in ball form only. Why do celebrities have such weird food preferences? But anyways, she ended up meeting Gene Simmons from Kiss at one of the mansion parties. Let me bring up Gene Simmons, hold on. Okay, here he is. They met at a mansion party. He was a Kiss member, and they ended up getting married. So she only dated him for 1 year, the year she was playmate. And then next up is Carrie Leigh, and that one is a lot of pettiness, is the only way to describe it. But he also had a stroke, Hugh did, in this time period before he started dating Carrie. So he was toning things down a little bit. But it's about to get really dramatic for that relationship. This is him and Carrie Leigh, and they started dating in 1985, and most of what we know is actually from the fallout of the relationship because she sued him after they broke up. And she said that she had given up her entire career for this relationship and to help him run Playboy. And I don't know, but this photo definitely looks like she's running shit to me. But anyways, she also said that Hugh had promised to support her and that they would have children, and that if they couldn't have children naturally, he had material stored for her of his that she could use to have children with him. And she said that she even got pregnant in 1986, but he wanted her to terminate it, and she did, because he had promised that they had material so that they could have children later on. He just thought it was too early. So Hugh said that none of that was true. He said that not only did he not want children and not promise children, he didn't want children to the point that he had her monthly cycle above their bed to make sure that no accidents happened, which is really not wanting kids. But it's really he said, she said on a lot of this stuff. So part of the lawsuit was about the fact that she had never gotten a child, even though he promised a child. But the other part was financial support, because while they were together, he was paying her $5,000 a month. She had one of his credit cards on hand, and she also was promised a yearly sum that was $1,000 times her age. And they met when she was 19. At this point, she was 24. So that's a lot of money that she could have gotten moving forward. So originally the lawsuit was for $5 million, but she actually decided that wasn't enough, and she went for $10 million plus $20 million in punitive damages, because she felt like he needed to learn his lesson to stop going after young women and preying on them and then tossing them to the side when he was done with them. I'm gonna have to put the rest of the claims that they were making about each other back and forth in a second video, but the first one I'm gonna talk about because Carrie's attorney said that Jessica Hahn, who had just moved into the mansion, she was a playmate, was the source of their breakup. And Jessica Hahn's story is important, so I'm going to tell it. So this is Jessica Hahn, and before she was a playmate, she was actually a secretary at a Pentecostal church. She was Pentecostal, deeply religious, and she went to meet Jim Bakker, who was a Pentecostal minister at the time. And he was like her idol. He slipped something in her drink, and him and another minister took advantage of her. And when she came forward with the story, they both lost their ministries. as they should have. But I think that it was easy to blame the breakup on her because I think a lot of people were already blaming her for these ministers losing their jobs, which in reality, it's 100% their fault that they lost their jobs. And I don't think that she was to blame for the breakup. I think it was just good timing that she had just moved into the mansion, and it made her a really easy target for putting the blame on. But that wasn't the only cheating claim that Carrie was to make, because she also said that Hef was cheating on her with men. And Hef actually said that that was true. So Hugh, who's famously very sex positive, very open about his sexuality, said, yeah, I was exploring bisexuality and I slept with some men. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there isn't anything wrong with that except for the fact that you were in a relationship. So you're generally not supposed to sleep with other people. But she thought that it was more. She had this theory. And her theory was that Hef was a closeted gay man this whole time, and that he was just using women for money and power. And I think it's an interesting theory, but I don't really think that it's accurate, to be honest. So while Hef admitted to sleeping with men while they were in the relationship, he said that he knew that she had also cheated on him, including with women. So, pot calling the kettle black, possibly. He also said that he had concrete evidence that she was only with him for his money, which I don't want to say that he should have known, but I think he should have known, especially when she's suing you for that money now. I think you should have known, buddy. And the last claim that Carrie made was that Hef was supplying her with substances while she was living in the mansion to use. But he said that was not true at all, and in the last 3 years of their relationship, he was actually helping her to stop using. But that is when Hef got really petty, and he put out an entire Playboy magazine on the suit. And he said that she got fat transferred from her butt to her lips, which nobody would bat an eyelid at today, but let me show you this magazine cover. And so Hef started getting extremely petty at this point, and he was saying that she got fat transferred from her butt to her lips, but not just that. He actually put out a whole Playboy issue on the lawsuit. Hugh Hefner released this Playboy magazine, all about the lawsuit. And who is that on the cover, you may ask? Because it's not Carrie. It's Kimberly Conrad, his new girlfriend. And she moved into the mansion 2 weeks after Carrie and Hef broke up. Sorry, I had to add that in. It fit too perfectly. But anyways, in this magazine, he talked about the lawsuit, and he basically painted a picture of Carrie being this evil woman who had just taken advantage of Hugh Hefner and his big, big heart. And at this point, I would like to remind everyone that when they met, she was 19 years old, not even in her 20s yet, not even out of her teens. And he was in his 50s and already a mogul. So I don't know about who took advantage of who. It's hard to say. Apples to oranges, really. But the petty king even included an entire spread of photos of Kimberly in his magazine, including one that was captioned, "After the Wicked Witch, a Beautiful Princess," which is really just stabbed to the heart right there. Not nice. But Carrie moved on, and she ended up dropping the suit because she got married to someone else. And Hef ended up countersuing her, but I don't think that went anywhere either. So finally, that whirlwind is over, and we can move on to Kimberly Conrad. This is Hugh Hefner and Kimberly Conrad's relationship that we're at now. It's the late 80s. She is 26, he is 63, and this is the oldest woman he had dated so far at that point. 26 years old. Yeah. So when they met, she was doing a shoot for Playboy at the mansion. She was a playmate, and when they first met, he was still dating Carrie Leigh, and she also had a boyfriend. So nothing happened, even though she said later on that sparks were flying, but they just didn't make any moves because they were in relationships. Smart. And here's one of her famous shoots. I showed it in the last one, but on her second time
coming to the Playboy Mansion to shoot, he was broken up with Carrie. And she was also single. And again, sparks flew. But she did not want to be a one-night stand. She did not want to be a rebound. So her strategy was to keep other playmates in the guest house with her that night so that Hef couldn't come over in the middle of the night and nothing would happen. And I guess it worked because they did start dating, and they had a very serious relationship. They started dating like right after that shoot. She moved into the mansion, and she said that it was very serious, very quick, and it moved very rapidly. In fact, Kimberly said that 1 month in, she knew that they would be together for a very long time. And apparently at 3 months, they were already talking about marriage, which is interesting because he had just broken up with Carrie Leigh because he didn't want to commit and have children, which is going to become very ironic very quick. And when asked about the age gap, Kimberly said that Hugh was very young at heart, so it was not an issue. And I will say, many, many girlfriends have said that Hugh Hefner is young at heart when they're asked about the age gap. But I don't know about that. He likes to stay at home. He likes to wear pajamas all the time. He likes strange foods, and has like weird, picky, grumpy preferences for things. He likes old movies, and later on he'll start imposing a curfew of 9 p.m. That's when he likes to go to bed, I guess. It doesn't seem that young to me, but he definitely likes young women. So again, she also described him, like other girlfriends had, as very affectionate, very romantic. She even said that he liked to leave love notes under her pillow in the morning. And they were both set on monogamy. This man here, that you know as Hugh Hefner, he was set on monogamy, as was she. And of course, it was hard for people to believe that he was set on monogamy, but she said that she felt like he had had plenty of time to sow his wild oats, and he was happy with that, and that they were ready for commitment. So here comes commitment. Yes, that's correct. Second wife. Hef did marry her. He proposed to her apparently after they had been playing foosball at the mansion in front of the wishing well at the mansion. Staying home, young at heart. And Hugh Hefner's mother was actually not very pleased with the pairing. She thought that Kimberly was way too young for him, which I think is probably a sentiment that most people felt at the time. But he said that it was too late for him to marry anyone his age. They were all gone, all the options in the 60-year-old range. Or all the options that were like wrinkle-free, tight-toned body 60-year-olds. What can you do? Okay, I moved so you could see her dress. Very 80s. They had a huge wedding filled with former girlfriends of Hef's, which is personally what I would like for my wedding. Just what you want. It's a lot of exes there. But they were living happily ever after at this point. Just a member of the family. So see these two kids here? They are, in fact, his kids with Kimberly Conrad. Remember earlier when him and Carrie broke up, and Carrie said that he had promised her children and commitment, and he said, "That's ridiculous. Why would I, Hugh Hefner, have ever promised anyone commitment and children?" Well, maybe Carrie was telling the truth, but that has got to hurt to see him then immediately go and marry a woman and have kids with her. But they did have two beautiful kids, and one of them is, I don't know which one, is running Playboy now. However, they did end up getting divorced, and Kimberly and the kids moved into a guest house next to the mansion, so they would still be near him. And when talking about the divorce, Hef said that he was faithful, but she was not. And after this marriage is when Hef will get into the 2000s circulating playmates, multiple girlfriends phase. This is Brandy Roderick. This is his next girlfriend. And this is the start of the 2000s. Yay! And this is where girls start to circulate. Brandy was an actress on Baywatch. She was Playmate of the Year in 2001. She was with him a year, and then they broke up. She continued to pursue acting, and she left the mansion. During that year, he also had the Bentley twins with him. And here are the Bentley twins, Sandy and Mandy, sporting some very early 2000s eyebrows. Love it. So they did have Sandy, Mandy, and Brandy. But when things didn't work out with Brandy, he decided to really, go full force with the girlfriends. And so he added 5 more, slowly, but 5 more. So here he is with some girlfriends, some are playmates. There's 7 girlfriends in this picture, and then Paris Hilton and some other playmates. And there was a lot of club nights. This is one of them. But that is when we started to learn a lot more about life in the Playboy Mansion, because girls started spilling the tea for us. And I'd also like to note that not every girl stuck around for the same period of time. It really just depended. A lot of them were pursuing their own career opportunities while they were in the mansion. And I mean, honestly, being one of his girlfriends was kind of a career opportunity in and of itself. They got a lot of publicity and opportunities just from dating him. So this girlfriend in particular of the 7 is Isabella St. James. And she was the first to leave the mansion and then write a book about it. So that's where information really started to come out, and she dragged him through the mud. And here she's with Usher, which is just a fun side note. He looks really uncomfortable. So some of the claims that Isabella made in her tell-all book after she left the mansion. She said that he was jealous and that he was cheap. I don't know the cheap thing. I don't know if that's true. But I will say I've seen Girls Next Door, and he does seem pretty jealous. But we'll get more into the rules later. She also said that he was using Viagra constantly, which I don't think shocked a soul out there. More importantly, she said that he was constantly supplying the girls with beverages and horse tranquilizers, that substance that starts with a Q, which he obviously denied. And he said that everything in the book was a lie and that she was just begging on her knees to come back, actually. However, there was some stuff that was true. She said that nobody was getting tested for diseases, and that he never wore protection. And he said that they did get tested for diseases, but he didn't wear protection. Oops. But he said that that wasn't a problem because they were all getting tested, and proof of that was that nobody had ever gotten a disease or gotten pregnant. As if that's enough proof, because everyone's going wild talking about their diseases on the internet. And I do think this is a good time to talk about some of the other aspects of being a girlfriend in the mansion. So one of the things was they did have $1,000 allowance each week, but that was expected to be used for maintaining their appearance, specifically clothing, hair, nails, all of that, which is not a bad deal, although apparently that is the time of the week when he would give them their allowance and then tell them what they could do better in the relationship. They also had very strict rules for how they were to act in public and on social media. Kind of reminds me of like a sorority-esque kind of feel, a little bit, except they're all sleeping with this dude. But they also had a 9 p.m. curfew to keep them from cheating on him, which I don't know if it stopped all of them, to be honest. And one other little tidbit about the mansion, apparently it smelled horrid in there. He hasn't commented on it, of course, but other girls have described it as like damp and decrepit, kind of like unused. They had a lot of pets, so a lot of the girls had dogs, so sometimes they had accidents on the carpet. So kind of like I'm thinking like an old folks home smell, which he's an old folk, so I mean, what do you expect? But also, he's Hugh Hefner, so like you expect a bit more. We're in the Girls Next Door era, yay, yay, yay. And I'm Hugh in this photo. That's okay, whatever. We're gonna ignore that. But I am really excited because I love Girls Next Door and I love Holly. But we're not quite at Girls Next Door. Girls Next Door did not start until 2003, and Holly moved in 2001. And she was one of the 7 girlfriends, but then girlfriends got eliminated. And how did she meet Hugh? Well, she got invited to a mansion party, of course. So Holly was 21. She was working as a Hooters girl and a Hawaiian Tropic girl when she went to the mansion for a party and met Hef. And I said, of course, at the mansion because he didn't really leave the house at that point. He's getting super old. Like, I want to say he's in his 70s at this point, maybe early 80s, 70s. And they slept together. And she said that was really difficult for her because she felt like she had crossed one of her personal boundaries, and it was a factor in moving into the mansion. And I can totally see how that would happen. You know, if you feel like you've done something that you wouldn't normally do, you want to feel like at least it was for something, you know? And I think that was a way to kind of convince herself that it was okay. She also has said that you do have to sleep with him before you move into the mansion. And Kendra debated this, but I'll say I trust Miss Holly. I love her so much. So first, she was one of the 7 girlfriends, and apparently there was a lot of animosity in that situation, and Hef was big on fostering competition between the girls. He wanted them to fight over him, and they did to some extent. But when it got down to just Kendra and Bridget and Holly, there really wasn't any bad feelings towards the other girls like they showed in the TV show. She said that wasn't the way it was. We were all good. And she was his number 1 girlfriend. And they look quite sweet in this picture, but it's really not sweet in hindsight. Here's Kendra Wilkinson, Holly Madison, and Bridget Marquardt. And I don't know if I'm saying it right, and I'm really sorry if I'm not, but it's a hard word for me to say for some reason. But they were the stars of the show. Originally, it was supposed to be about the mansion staff, but they decided that these 3 were much more interesting, and I agree. The show started in 2003, and according to Holly, life got a lot better for them when Girls Next Door started. Hef wasn't quite as controlling. There was a lot of new opportunities they got to do, especially shooting for the cover of Playboy, which was a lifelong dream of Bridget's and of Holly's, and I'm sure of Kendra's as well. And Holly said that it was actually a very validating experience because all of his ex-girlfriends had, and it made her feel like finally she was enough. She was pretty enough. She was just as much as a good girlfriend as the others. She was just as important to him. And that is so hard, especially in the episode where they shoot. She talks about how he has told her that she's not photogenic, which just breaks my heart because literally look at her. She is photogenic, okay? She's photogenic. Come on to my house. I'm gonna give you candy. That circulates in my head all day long. And this intro is iconic, and I love it. But they are kind of like flat characters. They don't have a lot of character development, and there isn't a lot of plot. But what really was like captivating about the show is that you just know that there's other stuff going on behind closed doors. And eventually the world found out about that, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but let me just keep talking about the show for just 1 second because I love this show. So Holly has said they were given characters. Kendra is the sporty one, Bridget is the career girl, and Holly is the one who cares about Hef. But in reality, they were all had their own things going. Holly was learning real estate, Kendra was in massage school, and Bridget was getting her masters. And they made them all out to be bimbos, essentially. But you do get a sense in the individual interviews that they know it's like a bit about them, and they slide in little ways to be like really funny with their tone and their inflection, especially Holly. And you can tell that they are smart. And before I get into the next part, I just want to make the note that these 3 had to fight to even get paid for the show and to get their full names put into the credits, which is ridiculous. I mean, come on. They're the stars. So they regularly had club nights about twice a week. And afterwards, with whoever was also going out with them, playmates or whatever, they went back to the bedroom. And as Holly describes it, I'm going to try and not be graphic so that TikTok will let me put this up. It was a semicircle of girls around him. with little to no clothing, kind of doing their own thing. Explicit content blasted on the TV screens, and him in the middle, self-employed. And he, then sometimes they'd like take turns, but mostly self-employed. Sounds like a very weird scenario. I don't think anybody will be surprised when I say that Holly had some mental health issues, as I'm sure did the others, while she was in the mansion. It was a very toxic environment, and she said Hef was very manipulative of her. And she did consider ending things a few times, as in like her life, not with Hugh. And ultimately she thought that she really wanted to marry and have children with Hugh Hefner. But when she realized that that was never going to happen, that's when things ended between them. They broke up in 2008. She had been living there for 8 years, and apparently as a last act of desperation, he put her into his will. But she was never in it for the money, and she didn't care. And she has said since that she's glad that she did not have children with him, because it was such a toxic environment. And obviously, I know people are going to say she did want money, but obviously she wanted opportunities. But by the end of those 8 years, she really thought that she was in love with him. I think she describes it now more like Stockholm Syndrome, but she thought that she was truly in love with him at the time. And after they broke up and Holly left, she did really well. She performed in Vegas, she wrote books and stuff, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I want to get to the other girls before I talk about the fallout of the show. And we'll first talk about Bridget, and she is such a cutie. So Bridget originally was in the 1998 Playboy Millennium Playmate search. She didn't get it. She'd actually tested for Playmate about twice before she actually went to the mansion and met Hef and started dating him. And she was 27 when the show started in 2003. And in the show, she was the one that wanted a career. She was getting her master's in broadcast journalism, and that was a lot of her storyline. But another part of her storyline, at least in the beginning, was that she had always wanted to be a playmate. She'd always wanted to be a centerfold. And she finally achieved that dream, which is great. Okay, and next we have Kendra Wilkinson. She was the sporty girl, and she met Hef at his 78th birthday party. She was 18, and she was one of the painted ladies, which they like paint their naked bodies to make it look like they're wearing bikinis. Anyways, he saw her photo and had to meet her, and then they slept together. 18 and 78. And she described it as basically a job. You know, you get your paycheck, you do what you have to do, you don't really like it. She was also apparently intoxicated on the job a lot. That was her way of getting through it. So Kendra moved into the mansion, and she did say that the 9 p.m. curfew was one of the hardest things for her because she was young. She wanted to go out. She's kind of a party girl. Like, she was rambunctious and fun, and she had a 9 p.m. curfew and was hanging out with an old man, which kind of sucks. I will say I was watching the episodes back, and I hate to say it, but she does kind of come off like a pick-me girl in the episodes. And I don't know if that was just the producers, but it's just the way she talks about the other girls' interests. Like, oh, it's not cool to decorate cookies, and they're so girly. Like that's a crime to want to decorate a cookie. She was not immune to the toxicity of the mansion either, even though she reflects on it as good times. She did say that Hef made comments about their appearances, told her she should lose weight, that kind of thing. You do see it a little bit in the shows too. And like, why? The lack of respect. It's like he thought he owned these women, and in a sense he did. I mean, it was almost like their job. But just the sheer audacity is absolutely ridiculous, because she's obviously beautiful and did not need to hear that or lose weight at all. So first, Holly. Holly wanted to be the only girlfriend. She wanted a marriage. She wanted children with Hef. And once she realized that that was never going to happen, and it had been 8 years, she decided it was time for her to move on. And as a last act of desperation, Hef actually put her in his will, but at that point it was too late, and she didn't want the money. And I know a lot of people are going to say that she was in it for the money, but she was not. Obviously, she wanted some career opportunities out of it, but she, by the end, was in love with him. And now she describes that more as Stockholm Syndrome, but she believed that she was in love with him. And it was very difficult for her to leave that relationship. And after she left, she did great things. She's been in a bunch of Vegas shows. She wrote a book. She has a YouTube channel. And she was on a Call Her Daddy podcast. She's awesome. I highly recommend checking out her stuff. And she talked very candidly about her experience there, even though Hef and Kendra denied it. Denied, said that she was being ridiculous. Bridget ended up leaving shortly after Holly. She just felt like her time was up. She just was ready to pursue other things. Kendra, on the other hand, met her future husband, Hank Baskett, at a mansion party, and they ended up getting married after she moved out of the mansion, but they got married at the Playboy mansion. And when the book that Holly wrote came out, Hef said that she was only doing it for fame and that none of that was true, and Kendra actually agreed with him. And I will say that Holly did call Kendra fake in her book. So maybe that's why Kendra was not too happy with it. But she said that Holly had ulterior motives the whole time. Holly was just in it for money and for kids, which, like, how are kids an ulterior motive to a relationship? But she said that Holly was never in it for the right reasons. And Kendra said that Holly had no reason to complain because Hef had created their careers for them, given them so many opportunities. And I agree that he gave them so many opportunities. But I think it was really easy for Kendra to say that because she was not in the same relationship with him as Holly was. Holly was the number one girlfriend. She slept in his bed. She was with him 24/7. She was expected to check in with him 24/7 and to keep these two doing what Hef wanted them to do. And the secondary girlfriends, they were girlfriends, but they didn't have to be in such a toxic environment as Holly did. She had a lot of extra pressure on her, and I think that contributed a lot to Kendra thinking that her time was so much better than how Holly described it. So this is the second part of the Girls Next Door era after Holly left, and of course Hugh Hefner immediately had two new girls. And this is Carissa and Christina Shannon, the second set of twins that he's dated. They were playmates first, and they actually lived in the mansion before the split with Holly, but they weren't girlfriends. And they became girlfriends after he broke up with Holly. They were 18 at the time that they became playmates, and they were 19 when they became girlfriends. And they were also on the 6th season of Girls Next Door, which had a different cast because he had new girlfriends. They also were the first twins to have their own months as playmates, July and August. Like, each twin had their own thing, which is nice. But they were the secondary girlfriends, and the main girlfriend was Crystal. And here's Crystal Harris. She became the main girlfriend in place of Holly. She moved in 2009. She was 26 years old. He was 86 at this point. And she was an aspiring singer. Crystal also had a fun job at the mansion, and that was in the scrapbook room, which she described as one of Hef's biggest hobbies. But I'm pretty sure that you can't classify something as a hobby if you're just paying other people to do it for you, which he was paying her. She got $10 an hour working in the scrapbook room with the scrapbook team. Okay, side note, because I was rewatching these today, she talks to him like he is her grandfather. Like, the way that you talk to old people who are, like, hard of hearing and maybe they don't get your lingo. Like, look, Grandpa, this is how you make a TikTok. That's how she talks to him. So off-putting. And Hugh actually had the twins move out because things were getting serious with Crystal. And eventually, they got engaged. And not only did he claim that they were soulmates while they were engaged, but he also said that he was getting the most attention from young women that he had ever gotten in his life at that age. But he wanted to stick with Crystal. Unfortunately, though, Crystal ended up calling off the wedding right before, and she even slammed him on a radio show saying she wasn't sexually attracted to him at all. But the main reason she called it off was because she said that their lifestyles just weren't compatible. She didn't want women constantly around, which was always going to be Hugh Hefner's life. This was their thing for the 6th season of Girls Next Door. But as soon as she moved out, the twins moved back in, as well as one of Crystal's best friends, Anna Sophia Berglund, who became Hef's #1 girlfriend, and rumors were spreading that they had been sleeping together the whole time that he was engaged to Crystal. But even though Crystal said that she was never sexually attracted to him, apparently they were both miserable without each other. And Mary O'Connor, Hef's secretary, brought Crystal back into the fold. So they actually did get back together. She became his #1 girlfriend again, and the wedding was back on. And they got married in 2012 on New Year's Eve. Here they are at their wedding. And she was his wife until he died in 2017, which is crazy to think that she was that young and she's already widowed. And actually her high school boyfriend had also died in the army. So it's got to be tough for her. And as for the end of Hugh Hefner's life, he did not end up being buried next to Marilyn. He chose to be buried next to his mother. Cooper Hefner, his son, got creative control of the magazine, and the mansion was sold to Twinkies, although apparently it's been abandoned essentially now. And if you've stuck with me this long, I very much appreciate it, because I had to get this out of my brain and onto TikTok, back to the streets or anywhere else. And it's so fucking juicy. And I know that I'm not supposed to say that word because TikTok isn't gonna like it. And TikTok definitely wants these videos to come down. I'm sure I'm not getting like any views on them, but I don't care. And if even one person requests this series, another one, I will research the hell out of whoever you want me to, because it really entertains me during the day. So just let me know. I have some ideas, but I live to serve, so.